Naming Right by Jill Curtin of Northwood 2066. Narrated by Rowena Robinson. Let me tell you a story. It's a personal story, but it has a universal theme. In 1920, my grandparents were married behind the altar in a Catholic church. My grandfather was a Protestant, and at that time bigotry prevailed over common sense, and he was deemed unfit to stand before the altar of God in a Catholic church. How things have changed! Despite the lack of bountiful priestly blessings, my grandparents had a good marriage, marked by love, hard work, and friendship. A Welshman, my grandfather had left home to serve in the Boer War, and being of an adventurous spirit, later made his way to Australia in time to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force. He saw service during World War I in Rabaul as a radio operator, a skill which enabled him to obtain employment with the Postmaster General's Department in Sydney after he was demobilised. Having secured a war service housing loan, he and my grandmother, whom he met shortly after the war ended, purchased a home on Sydney's northern shore in 1920, and it was to this home they went on their wedding night. Call it fate, legerdemain, or luck, or a combination of all three. But as in any game of chance, the cards dealt us are often beyond our control. Today, I find myself living in that home, which holds a history that is important to me and has allowed me to discover my grandfather, a man who died before I was born. When I cast my eyes around the house, the people who used to inhabit it come alive. There are no ghosts or apparitions roaming the corridors, but instead what I see is evidence of the love and craftsmanship of the earlier generations who lived within its protective walls. I can see how important the house was to them by looking at the work they did to keep the house habitable and make the house a home. The 40-year-old house which they purchased was already showing signs of deterioration, neglect, white ant infestation, and a collapsing roof. Despite some pleasant architectural features, it was never a grand house. Just a simple 2-bedroom cottage with basic facilities, but its saving grace was its location. Surrounded by trees, through which could be seen the beautiful Lane Cove River. With no financial resources to fall back on, my grandfather's income was their only source of money. So they had to make do whichever way they could, and mostly that was with sheer hard work. Evidence of those labours is not hard to find. A timber veranda with large dimensioned stone foundations was added on the southern side of the house to protect it from strong prevailing winds and rainy weather. The stone was quarried from the bottom of the garden and brought up the steep slope by my grandfather. The old sepia box brownie photographs reveal a man of only medium build, but he was obviously wiry and deceptively strong. The construction of the veranda would have been an enormous job and perhaps took many years, but it has served the property well, and the jagged rough-cast walls, with no damp course, have withstood the test of time, remaining dry and weatherproof. In the lounge room, there is a beautiful round stained glass window, aglow with light each morning when the rays of the sun shine through the individual triangular panes, and pretty patterns play on the polished wood flooring. A magical kaleidoscope of colour and shape every day. I am in awe of my grandfather, who created such a beautiful object. The bulky black japanned finish wood and faded vermilion leather-covered chair that matches a rustic-style bookcase was also his work, and both are still functional and attractive in their own way. These objects tell me so much about their creator. He was a physically strong man, blessed with fine motor skills. He was artistic, patient, loving, and very much a homemaker. My grandmother's carefully annotated dog-eared photo album allows me to peep once more into their world. Those tiny brown-tinged pictures, curling a little around the edges, show family groups on rugs, under a jacaranda tree, on the front lawn having a cup of tea. I recognize a few of the faces of former neighbors whom I remember from my childhood. They look happy and relaxed. Ranunculus, my grandmother's favorite flower, lean forward over the rockery behind them. A family tree grows with each generation. The branches extend and divide. My 3 children and their children are fine additions, and the tree continues to flourish. The sure foundations my grandparents laid down helped me establish a family that prospered, not with vast wealth, but enough to be comfortable to provide a pleasant, stable home and a good education for my children. Those foundations have been maintained and strengthened. Like the ancient art of timber veneering dating back to early Egyptian times, each generation adds an important and unique layer to the quality of the family tree on which those who come after us can build. We help them stand taller and stronger. Thinking back once again to my grandparents and how they led their lives, hard work was in abundance, but so too was love and friendship. Without both, their lives would have been nothing but drudgery. They shared their lives with friends. All were welcome into the home they built, and their legacy has become my life lesson. I can see they set goals, were persistent, constant, and prepared to work hard, but they had time to share the joy of their achievements. The more I ponder on my grandfather, the more I understand why a very elderly neighbor who knew him well accosted me one day shortly after my son was born. "You will name your boy after your grandfather, won't you?" And I did, to honor his grandfather. His name is Robert. The end.